It's
Now
going. It's
Now it's live.
not gonna lie to you, I feel kind of naked this week without the headset.
It's like,
Wow. Well, welcome everybody to our attachment series, episode 10 of the Justin and
Caitlin show.
Hey, I got my hands pointed so they work.
I know, you did good.
Screen. Took me 10 episodes.
The little mirror.
So welcome everybody. It's going to be a series on attachment. Tonight's going to be an introduction. Then the next 4 weeks, we're going to go through each attachment style and break it down in more detail and really dig in and fine tune. Tonight's going to be a lot of oversight, but also really good information. And we're going to end, Lord willing, with our timing, the last 10 minutes or so on what it actually feels like to start healing and changing your attachment style in therapy. I said this in our post, I believe Monday. There's a ton of information on attachment out there. Research was awesome.
Yep.
But there's not much written about what it feels like going through the process. And I know for me that was like a big what the heck is going on here moment. So without further ado.
Real quick, before we introduce these, I think talking about attachment is so vital because, again, we are broken in relationships. We are wounded in relationships. And we also heal in them. And so if we're not able to attach and feel safe to other people and the things around us, because attachment is not just how we attach to our friends or how we attach to our partners. Attachment plays a role in everything. How we attach to work, how we attach to working out, if we have any addictions. Attachment plays a role in all of that. And so if we're going to heal in relationships effectively, then we need to understand how we're attaching to everything around us. So now, without further ado, our 4 attachment styles. And I'm going first. Okay, so secure is the first attachment style. This one is, without getting into anything, it's what we're all striving for.
Yeah,
we're trying to get there. That's the goal.
Ambivalent gets tended to be looked at as a push-pull, and we're going to get into this, but it's I want love, but it's scary. Yep. Avoidant, we kind of look at, I use the metaphor of like a cave. We're like, you know what? I'm better off alone. I don't trust you people. I'll hang out away from this.
Yep.
Disorganized is a tough one, and to be honest, it's a sad one. We won't get a ton of this, but it really comes from a place of literally the people that were supposed to care for us were so abusive and harmful that it causes chaos and confusion because the kid wanted to connect to mom and dad, but like, let's say they wanted to run up and hug mom and dad's leg to say, hey, mom, I love you. Hey, dad, I love you. But they knew they were going to get kicked. And so you could kind of feel the tension there of, I want to get loved. I know I can go, but I can't.
And if mom and dad, again, were the ones causing the chaos, we're instinctually wired as children to want to run to our primary caretakers, so to people to keep us safe. So what do you do when the person that's supposed to keep you safe is also the one causing the harm? Yeah. It doesn't compute in our brains. And so that's what forms this disorganized attachment where it is very chaotic. You're not really sure what to do. It's kind of like a push and pull, avoid, blow everything up in the meantime, and just relationships have not been safe at all.
Bad. And as we go through this, Caitlin and I are going to be sharing how we do therapy, and we may not do therapy the exact same way, and that's totally cool. We probably do therapy very similar, maybe use different words. Again, totally cool. Me personally, I do believe that Freud, going way back, talking about drives as being very important to how humans function and live. He had tied it very much almost all to sex. I don't believe that. I look at people through the lens that they're seeking attachment to avoid loneliness. That's kind of my general, how I conceptualize people, and how's the attachment play into avoiding loneliness, and what you said earlier with addictions. Remember this, we're not getting into this a ton tonight.
Yeah.
But your addiction is a relationship. It's a relationship to the gambling, to the marijuana, the beer, the sex, whatever. And to remember this about attachment, it's something you experientially learn.
Mm-hmm.
Starts in utero when you're a little peanut growing in your mom, and you're developing how your mom and dad are interacting with you. They're realizing even when you're in your mom's womb, you are starting the very beginnings of how they're going to attach and engage you. Then obviously when you're birthed, it becomes far more experiential.
Yeah.
We'll get to that in a little bit. But knowing this is something that was learned through experience at a super young age. Did you want to talk about kind of your style or conceptualization of attachment with clients?
It's similar. Usually when we talk about, again, things that they're doing or behaviors they're engaging in, there is this ultimate fear of being alone. And when you're able to finally get to that, and a big thing is like, okay, staying in relationships that are not healthy or are not working. It's like, well, what is the fear then of ending this relationship or of doing a new project or of starting this new behavior? And a lot of times the fear is they'll be alone.
Mm-hmm.
And it's intense and it's very, very hard to even sit with that fear. And so these definitely play a role in it. And it is a pivotal part of therapy, is really addressing that.
Yeah. And also, real quick, I meant to say this earlier. Just know if you search attachment styles, you can also come across the new way that they conceptualize it.
It's very complicated.
Yeah, I'll be honest, I just don't get it. It doesn't make sense to me.
It's like anxious avoidant equals ambivalent, and
anxious fearful is avoidant, and anxious I can't even
now.
But
feels like 11.
Yeah, but this is kind of the old original way of doing it,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a little bit easier to follow. So if you're doing your own research, look for this. Secure, ambivalent, avoidant, disorganized. It's a little more simple and cut and dry.
Yeah.
Also recommend, if you want to get this book, Why You Do the Things You Do. I'll be honest, it does have a Christian flair to it. If that's not your flavor of the month, I tell people just ignore that part.
Yep.
The material in it is good and valuable. Understanding why you do what you do. And that it literally has to do with attachment styles.
Yep.
But
so
when we
jumping, what was that?
I'll jump to the next point.
The main two questions.
Yeah. When we talk attachment, there's two big questions we're asking here.
Mm-hmm.
Am I lovable? And do I trust others to love me?
Yep.
Those are the big questions we ask. And think about the filters you're creating as you're entering a relationship. Again, whether that's a spouse, dating, friend, whatever. If I don't trust you to love me, there's already kind of some limitations and distance there.
Yep.
I don't feel like I'm lovable, and so just think about where you may fall. But also, as you hear Kate and I walk through this in a second, it's not always just a yes and no response.
I think it's important too to recognize that we can have multiple attachment styles. We'll have one that we predominantly lean towards. And Justin and I, throughout this 5-part series or 6-part, whatever it ends up being, we will talk more about how we've attached and how we've had to work through that. But there's parts where we can have multiple. There's parts where I attach in a very ambivalent way, and then I attach very avoidantly. You get both. So, and then over time, again, it's not like you've reached a point and you're all secure. The goal is that the majority of our interactions become more secure. But it doesn't mean that we suddenly reach this level of perfection and we have completely secure attachment 100%. Our goal is just to get more and more secure throughout life. Yeah. And then when we do attach or start reacting in a way that is more ambivalent or avoidant or disorganized, it's having that grace for yourself, realizing where it came from, and then how can you choose to respond differently in that situation? And what would that look like?
Yeah. So why don't you bring us up on 2? Talk about secure and avoidant. How would a secure and an avoidant person answer those questions?
So secure, the answer would actually be yes to both. And this does not mean that they have a perfect life. This
Right.
means relationship disagreements still happen. Trials still happen. They still can wake up one morning, be late, have a disagreement with their spouse. The kids wake up late. They're late to work. Their boss go off on them. They get cut off on the highway. All of that can still happen in a morning.
Before 9 a.m.
Before 9 a.m. And they can still be upset. They can still be angry and need to have a very real conversation with their partner when they get home. But the foundation of that conversation will be, I do know I'm lovable. I am worthy of love. And I do trust that this person is capable and willing to love me. And so they go into the conversation with that foundation. Yeah. And there's this hope that the connection is going to be restored. It's not embodied by fear. It is, I know this will work out. We may have a rough patch, but I know that this connection is possible to be healed. And that's really the key if you're secure. So again, does not equate to a perfect life. They are not superheroes that suddenly have no problems in their relationships. It is just that the foundation is they do believe that they are lovable, they are worthy of love, and that others are able to love them. Now, when you jump to avoidant, you have a very different answer. And a lot of these attachment styles are formed through a lack of consistency. And we'll get into that in just a minute. So with avoidant, we have to recognize that growing up, the answer for number one, am I lovable? Yeah. They've learned very quickly how to meet their own needs. They've become very adept in meeting their own needs because usually needs were perceived as weaknesses. So they learned how to meet them. But do I trust others to love me? Answer is usually no. Either others have not been willing to in the past, others have not been capable, they've seen that relationships are not safe. Usually addictions are safer, which we'll get into another week. But again, answer to number one would be more yes. The answer to number two would be, heck no, I'm going to go hide out in my cave and stay there because I am not engaging this crap.
All right.
Yep.
So ambivalent, again, think push-pull.
Mm-hmm.
You'll see people kind of come close, and then maybe 2 days later, they won't return a text. So kind of think like kind of a push-pull method here. Generally speaking, again, ambivalent people to answer question one there, they don't feel like they're worthy of the love. So ambivalent know the underpinnings of answering these questions is more that they don't feel they're worthy of it.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't necessarily feel lovable, but it's actually more that they don't feel they're worthy of the love. They don't really feel they can trust others to love them, but that's because they do think people, sorry, I'm getting a little confused. They do trust others to love them, but they don't think they'll actually go through with it because of their flaws.
Yep.
So my buddy Johnny could come help me with the landscaping, but he won't because, I got angry last week. And so because of my flaws, people won't love me, and then they're not going to come through. They won't be reliable. So there's a little bit of a difference there. As far as disorganized, again, this one's a tough one. Again, they don't feel that they're worthy of love, and they for darn sure don't trust others to meet their needs. They don't think people are reliable to meet needs. Again, this comes from a very
painful place.
Yeah, it's a very sad and painful position. For those in that, they can appear to others to be very chaotic, and you're like, what the heck is wrong with that person? They can be very misconstrued. This can happen with all the attachment styles other than secure.
Yeah.
But it's a sad story, and meeting it with empathy is very helpful. But yeah, it's still a tough go.
Yep.
So the who, what, when, where, and how is, if, can, could, how. Just
Woo!
Start
off with the who, the primary caretakers. Ideally, your mom and dad.
Yeah. Or it could be adopted. It could be an adoptive parents. It could be a grandma, grandpa,
Mm-hmm.
aunt,
whoever
uncle.
the primary caretakers were.
Yeah. This is interesting.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm going to talk about the when.
Okay.
When we talk about when does attachment start? We talked about this early on. It's when you're in your mom's womb. It literally begins. See, that's how I do it. Yeah, I'm Italian from the Northeast. I got everything.
Great.
But it starts in the womb.
Mm-hmm.
And here's an interesting part for the fellas out there. It's very interesting. A lot of research is showing, and it doesn't matter if you end up having a boy or a girl, as far as your baby, but also how involved is the dad while the mom is, developing in that pregnancy phase? Is the dad putting his head and ear on the mother's, stomach, talking to the baby? Is the baby hearing? Believe it or not, they can hear and know the voices.
And no touch.
Yeah.
At week 5, guys.
And think about this, right? Think about it. If the research is true, and I'm going to trust those people, they're smarter than I with this. If the research is true that they can hear and distinguish between mom and dad's voice.
Mm-hmm.
If, let's just say dad's not really in the picture because he doesn't think it matters. They don't know. They're in there. I'll see him in 9 months. Think how weird that is when you're born. You're 9.5 months old.
Yep.
And now you start hearing this voice. Like, that's a little bit off, though. You're like, whoa, wait a second.
Yeah.
Where were you the last, bunch of months? All I heard was her voice. So, fellas, if you have a wife who is pregnant or a girlfriend, take part in the process. Hug her. Yeah. Snuggle with her. Talk to the baby. Play music. Touch. You can rub on the belly. It matters.
But I think that also ties in with Disorganized, where, again, if there's a lot of abuse in the household, whoever is causing that abuse, like, we don't know. The pregnant wife or pregnant mom could be living with them. Are you okay? Are you okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Road to.
Please don't die on Facebook Live. I'll keep talking for a second. So if there's abuse in the household, I'm really concerned about you.
All right, I'm back.
So if there's abuse in the household and the baby's already picking up on that, again, they're supposed to be able to feel safe in the womb. And if the mom doesn't feel safe, no matter who she's living with or where she's at, there's already that disorganized unsureness, chaoticness while they're in utero. So then if they come out and we're already adding on to that with more years of disorganized attachment, you can then see why as adults they struggle so hard to have healthy relationships or even to want to engage in a relationship. Because literally since conception, relationships have been dangerous.
Yeah.
So why would they want to engage in one?
And people might wonder, well, how would the baby know that it was like that? Because the baby will get washed in the adrenaline and cortisol that is generated during those threatening times. That fight, flight, freeze releases those hormone chemicals, and that goes into the baby and washes the baby. So then the baby starts getting used to those feelings and those hormones. Man, don't drink water and breathe at the same time. Just little FYI for those of you out there, if you're new to
Not on Facebook Live, guys. Just wait till after presentation.
Wow.
So, Justin, to answer the rest of your question, when does attachment usually finish forming by, or the primitive years for that?
Yeah, I mean, really, it's kind of etched in stone, so to speak, by age 3, 4 at the latest. At that point, you have seen and experienced enough that you have formulated how you're going to see and experience others, what expectations you're going to have as far as, is the world safe? Is it not safe? Are people safe? Or are they not? Think about a baby who is in the crib or in a cradle and they're crying and mom or dad is not very attuned, and you're going to talk about this in a sec with the how, but they're not very attuned to getting to the baby. That baby isn't going to lose his or her need for mom and dad. What he or she is going to start waning on is the expectation that they're going to come through. Again, whether that's to be burped, changed, fed, whatever, or just held. They still carry that need for their parents because obviously they need them to survive.
Yep.
but I don't expect others to come through. And you see how it starts playing into, I don't trust others to love me.
Mm-hmm.
And it starts forming answers to these questions literally months into existence.
And coming out of utero, then, with the how is this done? When we first talk about attachment with many people, there's this thought that, okay, well, I spent a lot of time with my parents or the primary caretakers. There was always someone there. It could have been a babysitter, it could have been a nursery, it could have been someone, but someone was always there. So why are you saying that, like, why am I not able to attach securely? But it's not the amount of time that you spent with these primary caretakers. Yes, that plays a role, but this is talking about attunement. Attunement is what plays into attachment. So attunement is, if we're using the mom as an example, it's when the mom can look at the baby, know what the baby needs, be able to empathize and know what's going on internally for the child, and then meet that need. So again, the baby's crying. Learning, is it the baby's hungry? Do they need to be burped? Are they just really tired and they need a nap? What is needed? And as the child learns how to communicate, they will learn how to communicate based on how they are attached to the parent. Because attachment is linked to survival as a child. Instinctually, we know as children, if our parents do not pay attention to us and meet our needs, and God forbid, if we are alone and we are abandoned as a child, that's it. We won't survive.
Mm-hmm.
So attachment is huge. Again, forming this when we are children, where if our parents, if there's things going on in the house where they are not getting along, where there's a lot of depression or anxiety, and the parents are not able to be present with the children, be attuned with the child to know what the child needs, and then be able to meet that need, secure attachment will not form. And the child is able to do this through mirror neurons where they're watching the parent's face. You can even go on YouTube and there's this video called the still face experiment. And it's newborns watching their parents' faces. And the parents will be laughing, the newborn will laugh. And you see how the baby's constantly watching their eyes, constantly watching their face. And then the parent will turn their face away and turn back and just have a still face. Not look angry, not look upset, just no expression. And the baby can't take it. The video is actually really, really hard to watch because you see the panic in the baby's eyes within seconds of their parent is not attuning to them. The parent is not able to be sad with them. They're not happy with them. They're not upset. Like something's off. And so that goes right into showing the beginnings of attachment and why this is so, so vital to understand, because it does affect us well into adulthood if we don't understand it.
Yeah. And a lot of times, again, not secure attachment. I'm talking about ambivalent, avoidant, disorganized.
Yeah.
The way we would get attention is either through anger, clinginess, or like desperation acts of no, come, I need you. And a lot of times we might see people and be like, oh man, he or she's clingy, or wow, they get angry about not realizing this is sadly again how they have learned to get their needs met.
Yep.
And that doesn't just come from nowhere. It comes from a tough place. And let's kind of round third base here and head home.
Yeah.
And this is kind of the end of the first episode as far as getting into some deeper stuff here. What does it feel like to begin changing your attachment style? I do want to offer a ray of hope that if you're like, oh man, I think I'm ambivalent or I'm avoidant or I'm whatever, know that the goal in therapy is to help land in an area we call now earned secure attachment. So just because the ship sailed, I'm not 3, I'm 30 something years old now.
Yeah.
It's still able to be healed and worked through. So there is, a winnable situation. That was literally my question. Is this winnable?
Mm-hmm.
I was like, all right, cool. One of the things to remember, we touched on and off all episode. Attachment literally is based in survival. Personality disorders come from this. We won't get into that tonight. But again, our need to attach to our parents or primary caregivers, whoever that is, grandma, grandpa, uncle, whoever, is literally needed because I can't go work a job. I can't go to the grocery store. I'm 8 days old. I don't even know how to walk yet. I need you to provide so that I can live.
Yep.
So remember, we started the show saying this is learned and learned experientially, which means it can be unlearned and relearned experientially, which Caitlin talked about healing in relationship. Having said that, you might think to yourself, okay, dude, I think I'm ambivalent. All right, I do the push-pull thing. Cool. So when I start healing and I start engaging other people in a healthy way, having healthier relationships, that's going to feel wonderful. And that was my thoughts going into therapy. Like, oh, this is going to be great. I'm going to be around healthy people. This is amazing. And when I got around these healthy people, I was like, nope. Like at times it was worse. Because you got to remember, part of our survival is we learn to predict. And I talk to my clients about playing a game. I use checkers. I say, you grew up and someone taught you how to play checkers. That's your relational game of checkers.
Yep.
When you start realizing, man, this game of checkers kind of sucks. And then someone comes along that's maybe healthier and whatever, and they bring a chessboard, you're like, what the heck are those pieces? Why did that one just jump over 3, move left, and why did one only go at an angle? And you're like, this game's terrible. And you push it away, go back to checkers. And that's how we get stuck, and we start playing the same relational patterns. So it can feel sometimes very threatening because it's unpredictable. You're sailing into new territory. I'll tell you straight up, a struggle of mine with Andrea early on was she was so nice and all these nurturing and all these very kind and consistent was a big thing. But my first question was like, what do you want from me? What are you trying to get from me? Because I didn't trust. I didn't trust, like, what are you really trying to get out of this? All right, you're going to get close to me, but what do you really need? Like your car fixed or something? Like, what's the deal here?
Yeah.
And then you had to realize, dang, maybe she just really wants to get to know me because she wants to get to know me. There is no hidden agenda.
Yep.
And I'll tell you, I got nervous. Really nervous to the point where I almost threw up on her a few times.
That is true, guys. That is very, very true.
There was times I was planning to book a flight to Mexico or Canada, whichever flight was cheaper.
Farther away.
Yeah. I'll tell you, like, it is very nerve-wracking. And then the times to challenge that, to work through, a lot of times it's to literally just be held. And you're like, nope, don't touch me. Because touch is another thing that's very difficult, especially if you have a trauma history with sexual assault or physical abuse.
Yeah.
Touch is not one of the 5 senses you're keen on going to. Yep. That's actually one of the main ones that help calm down. And a big part for me, I'll tell you straight up, and I'll let you kind of share your side. Where I really struggled too was when I had that really anxious, terrified feeling. I didn't know if I had a phobia of relationships. And then once I learned about this whole attachment thing, a bunch of years ago, whatever it was, I was like, oh, but even still it was a little confusing because still within that, there's a discernment level of, okay, the person I'm about to lean into with this, with my vulnerability, are they healthy?
Yep.
Or not? So is this a sense internally that, no, this person's not cool to do this with? Or is this, hey, this person's actually pretty cool, but this is just really terrifying to be vulnerable? And that was really difficult, to learn that, because I didn't have a big evidence pile of, oh, this is a safe person, this is a not safe. Yeah. Because I have no idea.
What's great is when you actually start getting those evidence piles, because then you're able to discern it even quicker.
Yeah.
You can meet someone and within a few seconds to a minute be like, nope, I'm good. We're going to stay acquaintances. I'm going to move on from here.
Swipe left. No.
Like, no, we're not doing that. But yeah, I think for me, attachment wasn't talked about when I first began therapy. I just knew there was a lot of chaotic relationships, and I was terrified of being alone because I did not believe I could be loved. So I would purposefully seek out friendships or companionship to prove that I could be loved, that my trauma had not completely ruined me in a sense, and it was possible for someone to love me. But that also means engaging in a lot of unhealthy relationship dynamics. Because my first thought is not, is this person safe? My first thought is, please love me. Because what do you do when you come out of an abusive situation and the abuser has told you over and over and over, you will never be loved again.
Yeah.
No one will ever want you once they find out what I've done to you. No one will ever want you once they've seen this side of you. It's like, well, that's depressing. So how I took it was I would fluctuate between ambivalent and avoidant. Ambivalent for me was working through, and we'll get into this more when we talk about these individually, but it was that side of wanting that companionship so that I could prove I could be loved, then also being terrified of it and turning to addiction. It's like, so the actual process of working through that was terrifying because I had to actually slow down and be still and not run away. And for me, it was so much easier to run away and turn to an addiction because that was safer in a sense. It sucked. That was my game of checkers. It sucked. I hated it. But I knew the game.
But it was safe.
I knew how to play it. But it was safe because I knew how to play it. Yeah, safe.
The alcohol is predictable. Yep. I know how long it takes me to go to my favorite liquor store. I know how to make my favorite drink. I know about how many drinks to make to get to a buzz level I like.
To completely dissociate from everything going on.
And I'm in control.
Yep.
This
supposedly.
Is predictable.
Yeah.
So that concludes episode 1 of the Justin and
Caitlin show. We stayed really late tonight, guys. Wait till next week.
Yeah. So next week we're going to start with ambivalent. We're going to work kind of ambivalent, avoidant, disorganized, and end with secure and earn secure, so that we kind of work through, but then also know that there's hope and where we're going. Yep. Is to understand where you're at, but also know where therapy would be going.
Yeah.
If you worked with any of us. And Andrea works too in a very similar fashion.
Yep. But if you have ever dated someone that does the push and pull, if you do the push and pull, tune in next week because this will explain a lot about why that forms and then also how to heal that. And what's it even like to be in a relationship with someone who is ambivalent?
Yeah.
This might help you make sense of a lot. So.
All right. We'll catch y'all next week.
Yep. We'll be here.
I still don't get the mirrored thing.
I don't.